Afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Coach Diaz's weekly press conference. On Thursday night, Miami hosts Virginia at Hard Rock Stadium at 7:30 p.m. Coach, if we could start with an opening statement from you, we'll open it up to questions from media members on the call.
Yeah, Cam, thank you, and appreciate everybody being on the call today. I actually want to start off with a response to some comments that were made this weekend on ESPN about our university and specifically about the administration at our university. And the assumption that there's a lack of caring, a lack of standards for athletics at the University of Miami. And I want to remind everybody, it's not 14 months ago when we were in the grips of the coronavirus pandemic, and the narrative was that there's no way college football should go on in the middle of the coronavirus pandemic, no way. And we were out on the practice field in August, and it looked like the season was going to get canceled. And in my eyes, only through the leadership of our president, Dr. Julio Frank, going on record as an expert in infectious diseases and saying, not only can we have school on campus and the students on campus, which was not a widely held belief at that time, but we can play a college football season. Now, that would be a strong take for someone that didn't really seem that interested in athletics. Those two things don't really add up. And because of that, we forget, because we played a 2020 season, not just at Miami, but everywhere. If there not been his leadership, I don't know if the ACC would have agreed to play. And without the ACC, the Big 12 would have for sure dropped out. And then the Big 10 and Pac-12 had already, said they were not going to play football. So all of the memories, the records, the performances from a year ago have a lot to do with how much Dr. Frank feels about college athletics and specifically athletics at the University of Miami. There was mentions about resources, and I will just tell you from the time that I've been here at the University of Miami, what I've seen change on our campus, the new dorms, the new Lakeside Village, people always recruited against Miami in terms of the dorms, the stadium. I mean, we still beat the drum on the stadium. In my mind, we've got as nice of a stadium as anybody in college football. It's amazing what $500 million will do for you. And I sat in the Orange Bowl. I saw how many students came to the games in the 80s in the Orange Bowl. I was around for 4 of the 5 national championships before I graduated high school. It was what it was, whether it's a 20-minute drive to Little Havana or a 35-minute drive to Miami Gardens. It is what it is. We love our stadium. It's a big-time atmosphere. It's a big-time place. It's a great place to host recruits. The indoor facility behind me, the SOFR indoor facility behind me, phenomenal. We're attacking the locker room next. There's just a lot of things that are changing on the positive here. And I will tell you that the last 2 recruiting classes that we signed are really the first 2 classes that have been around when all this stuff existed. It wasn't pictures. It wasn't hopes or dreams or promises of when you come, we'll get these things. That class of 2020, Tyler Van Dyke's class and Jalen Rivers and Elijah Roberts and Chance Williams and Restrepo, Flagg, all these guys that are making a lot of big time plays right now. They're the ones that saw this. Those are the guys that committed to Miami on the back of a 6 and 7 season. And then you saw the 21 class. And I mean, Saturday's game was a commercial for the last 2 recruiting classes that we've had here at the University of Miami. And those classes don't happen without us increasing the resources and about the support from our administration of what it takes to win here. Now, I will say this, there will always be somebody with more resources. And I will tell you, that's not a Miami problem. That's a college football problem with a capital P that no one really wants to talk about. I mean, the growing disparity in the economic situations of the different athletic departments across college football, and what you're seeing now with conference expansion and the TV rights and all this type of stuff, that's a reality. And that just is what it is. But our best resource here at the University of Miami has always been our people. Always. That's always what we've won with, is our people. And people first, talk about our players. And that's why recruiting is so important. One game from last weekend doesn't fix anything. It doesn't absolve us from the performances of our first 3 weeks. I'm completely responsible for that. But I know this, what I've learned in my job is that, and I'm sure this is true in any profession, is if you want the organization to be better, you add better people to the organization. And I can tell you for a fact, with the support of our administration, our staff has improved every year. On the field staff, off the field staff, our support and recruiting staff has increased and gotten better every year. And our locker room has gotten better every year. It's not where we need to be yet. It's our job to develop these guys and to put them in position to be successful on Saturdays or Thursday like this week. But the only way forward at the University of Miami is through recruiting. And we cannot turn, we can't turn and push our recruits away from our program because of something that happens in the short term. The fix is our people. The fix is continuing to get the guys in this area that want to come and play for the University of Miami, and when we go out of area to sell them on the vision that we got going on here. And we got a lot of good things going on in evidence by these last 2 recruiting classes. So that's the only way forward. It's going to be the only way forward. Otherwise, we'll repeat the same loop over and over again, turning on ourselves and driving our recruits away, driving our people away. That's not the vision for this university. It's certainly not the vision of this athletic department, and it's not the vision of this football program, which I'll tell you, all 3 of those visions are completely aligned. So with that, I'll open up for questions.
Thank you very much, Coach. And we're going to start with Tim Reynolds from the Associated Press. Tim, go ahead.
Manny, after all that, what I was going to ask is kind of trivial. I had 2 things. One, obviously you start Coastal play in 3 days. The ACC is kind of wide open, to put it nicely. Do you talk about that with the team, or do you have to keep it very on the here and now, that the next game is Virginia and it's the first game in the Coastal and that's what it is? Or do you even think about it in those terms, about how just the ACC has a very different feel already as opposed to a lot of recent years?
Tim, if you look around college football, other than probably about 2 teams, every conference is wide open. And everybody, if you look at there's no doubt that's true in the ACC, but there is an unpredictability in college football after the first couple, and we're only in September still. What I will tell you, and I think kind of on song from where we started a week ago, coming off the Michigan State losses, we're not talking about that. We're not trying to say, hey, we're not worried about anything except, again, the tangible things in the moment that we still think have to be our focus. And again, whether it's physicality, whether that's protecting the football, which we did a better job on Saturday, taking the football away, which we did not do as good of a job as we wanted to on Saturday. Red zone production. The real things. We're just going to not talk about winning, and we're not going to talk about championship races and conference races and stuff like that. I think the players understand that that's all out there. But that is a reward for doing the little things right over the next 8 weeks.
Man, as a quick follow, obviously you played both guys at quarterback Saturday. Do you expect similar situation Thursday? How are you kind of handling that position going into the week? Thank you.
Well, first we're trying to see, Derek's availability. He's improving and feeling better every day, and was able to move around a little bit today. So we'll see where he's at with that. Based on the performance on Saturday, I don't think either Tyler or Jake deserves not to play if called upon. I think both guys did enough to show that they can move the football team and get us in the end zone, and neither guy did enough to say they wouldn't deserve to play. So we feel like we're kind of where we started. We're blessed with options of different guys that can lead us to victory.
Coach, we'll go next to David Lake from 24/7 Sports. David, go ahead.
Hey, Coach, just touching on the resource thing at the beginning you were talking about. I want to get your thoughts. Just, do you feel like the resources in terms of like the facilities and the support staff resources you have are comparable to, the Coastal Division? I know you said there's always going to be examples of programs around the country that might have more resources, but how do you feel like things compare within your own division?
David, I don't know enough about what other people in our division have to be able to say, with certainty. As coaches, we speak to, friends and contacts we have around college football to get some sort of sense. But if I go back to, again, I think of things in terms of where they are on a graph of time, and where we were in 2016, where we were in 2019, and where we are in 2021. And what's happening is everything's going up. You know what I mean? And we've just improved step by step along the way, which I think is the whole point, right? The whole point is to get better and to get what Miami needs. So I think that's a key point. And we'll always push. I know our administration will always push to try to get more and do more to get us as competitive as we can possibly be. But what's important now is with what we have to maximize what we have. And that's our responsibility as a program to make sure that's going on.
I just follow up about Virginia. Obviously, they enter this week's game with a passing offense that's been very productive. I guess what have you seen from them just on the film, and then also too, how do you feel like through these first 4 games, your pass rush and your coverage has been so far this year?
Yeah, it's going to be a great challenge for us. Obviously we wanted to have more sacks on Saturday than we did. The quarterback was difficult to get on the ground, kind of ran around back there. So we're continuing to develop, continue to work on our pass rush, being more consistent with our coverage matchups. Some there are times when some safeties have to match up on some play action passes, and just being better disciplined with the eyes. And part of that's just some of the youth we played with this past weekend. Virginia's always had a very well coached offense. Rob and I does a really good job. They've always been very efficient. And what I mean by that is they've been able to control a game with a lot of short passes. And that's how they would just sort of drive you down the field. And what makes them different this year is they're explosive in addition to efficient. They are getting chunk plays. I think they have 2 wideouts over 20 yards per catch. And that's and they've had some really good players that, at wideout, but they've got guys now that can blow past your coverage. They do a nice job of some double moves and some shots. And then they got the tight end, Woods over the middle of the field. They just have a different feel with their personnel than what they've had in the past, and they've done a nice job of adapting offensively to that. But then the quarterback, he's hitting people in the face mask. His accuracy jumps off the film. I mean, there was actually a play where he threw a curl and the receiver's head whipped back because it was so accurate. So all those 3 things, make them a little bit of a more difficult. This game has obviously been a low-scoring, very tight affair the last 3 years. It would make sense that it's going to be a tight affair again this year. It just seems like what happens when Miami plays Virginia. But they've got the ability to score some points, and we got to find a way to take them off rhythm and slow down some of that explosiveness.
Coach, next we're going to go to Kobe Price at the South Florida Sun-Sentinel. Kobe, go ahead.
Thanks, Cam. Hey, Manny. Kind of cut out a little bit, had some technology issues on my part, so my bad if this is a repeat question. But I had a couple questions. First, I want to ask about the quarterbacks, the Deangelo situation, what's going on with him, and I guess Tyler and Jake, where are they at, and if they need to step up. Like I said, if this is a repeat question, sorry. That's okay. Cut out.
It's fine. Like I said, Derek is improving. He moved around a little bit today for the first time. That was good. So we'll see what his status is for Thursday. And then, as I mentioned, Tyler and Jake, both those guys deserve, based off the performance Saturday, to play more. Neither guy did anything to suggest that they shouldn't play more. So like I said, we've got, today was our Tuesday practice. Tomorrow was our Wednesday, sort of third down red zone type practice. And after we get through tomorrow's practice, we'll kind of get an idea of what the arrangement is.
And I noticed that on the depth chart that was just released to us right before the call started, that James was listed as co-star to Whit Gervin. What did you see from him on Saturday that really elevated him to that spot? And I guess where are you at right now in terms of, who do you think will actually start versus Virginia?
Don't know yet in terms of who would start. Won't know that until the end of the week. There's a chance that, they could play together in some different packages. We'll have to sort of see how that works. But, I thought James was confident on Saturday. I think there's still some times where he's got to get his eyes in the right spot and do that, but that's just natural for your first time out there. He could make a play. He tackled well when he was in there. So to me, it's just, guys like that just need more at bats, more seasoning. But this is a major step up this week because, obviously, like I said, this is the number 1 passing offense in the country. So it's a bad week not to have your eyes in the right place.
Coach, we'll go next to Mike Barber from the Richmond Times-Dispatch. Mike, go ahead.
Hey, Coach, I wanted to ask, first off, since the ACC network came into existence, we've seen more conference games in week 1, week 2. They've kind of become the norm. Has it been a little weird to sit back while the division is kind of eating itself and have to wait your turn?
I guess we haven't thought about it like that. We've started some earlier conference games in different years, but what we know is we've got the 8 straight. We've got this one and then a bye and then really 7 straight after that. So look, we know what we expect in our league. There's a lot of good football teams in our league. I think sometimes games that people think are upsets is in a weird way disrespecting the team that's winning. I said all offseason, NC State's got a really good football team. If people knew Wake Forest had a good football team, and Boston College and teams like that, Pitt. This is a deep league with anybody that can get you pretty much on any weekend. So you got to get yourself in a mindset to play your best every Saturday or Thursday, as it may be.
And if I could follow up, you spoke about the passing attack at Virginia. Defensively, they've really struggled the last 2 weeks. They're playing more of that 5 defensive back. They seem to be blitzing less and getting less pressure. How different does the defense look than the past few years that you've seen?
Well, it's hard to when you play North Carolina, Wake Forest back to back. I mean, those are two outstanding offenses. Wake Forest not going to hold the football and let you blitz them and sack them. I mean, they're a ball out quick type operation, and then they're a problem when they get the run game going. And obviously, North Carolina with Howell, everyone understands what they're capable of. So. Look, we're all adapting, obviously Bronco Mendenhall is one of the top defensive coaches in our game, and everybody's adapting to find a way to, sort of go back to this back and forth between offense and defense with what they're doing now in the run game and the RPOs, to try to slow these people down. But ultimately it comes down to, getting off blocks and tackling. The respect that we have for Virginia, their personnel from playing them every year, a lot of guys that were in that game a year ago, and then the coaching staff there, we know this will be a great challenge for our offense.
Thank you.
Coach, we've got Tom Deangelo from the Palm Beach Post. Tom, go ahead for Coach Diaz.
Hey, Manny, how you doing? Can you guys hear me?
We can.
Going back to what you said earlier, do you think that the resources the program is putting into it, and the administration is putting into football and athletics in general? And I know your recruiting classes, you're very happy with them, and you've had very good recruiting classes. Do you think that's resonating more with recruits each year? Do you think they're seeing that? Is that a reason? Is that a reason, part of the reason, the main reason why you feel like your recruiting has really stepped up? Are they seeing these resources being put into football?
Well, I think that's exactly it. When the dead period ended in June and we had our, sort of barbecue cookout at the new dorms, I mean, those people come and they see that and they're like, holy cow, I mean, this is big time. And we didn't have that. We had the opposite. It was really poor. And everybody that recruited against us would tell, hey, make them show you the dorms. And would that be the thing that would drive a kid away? You never know. There were so many things that when Coach Rick got here that were easy shots to take at Miami in recruiting. And slowly through Mark's leadership, through Blake James' leadership, and obviously through, the university administration, we sort of attacked all those one by one. And there's still a couple that we have to get after. But it's better, and the recruiting follows. And I think that's a point, and that's what we got to get through. We got to be able to stack 4 classes. We got to be able to get these type of kids to want to play with these guys. There should be players that want to come play with Tyler Van Dyke and Jake Garcia. Defensive players should want to come play with Leonard Taylor and James Williams. But those guys heard stories forever. This time last year, nobody thought we were getting LT and James. And they heard stories forever on why not to come to Miami. And like I said, we've got to get the field on, the on-field product, not giving people a reason to not come. But we can't panic, and we've got to stay after it, because the only way forward is that you got to keep adding great recruiting classes.
And just to follow up on that, mentioning that the reason you think that, I guess, would be the arms race, the Taj Mahal, some of these places are building, is a problem. Do you just feel it's because of the competitive balance? Do you feel it's because of the perception that these are football factories and all and it's just a bad look? Why do you think that is a major problem in college football?
Well, because the word recruiting, right? Because what's different now than in the 80s or 90s is the unofficial visit or the official visit. People are seeing a lot more than they saw back then. And if you look at some of the great players that came through here and how few schools they actually ever considered, how few schools they actually offered them. I mean, recruiting is a national thing now. And you can get someone to go for 48 hours, and you can make a 48-hour experience with bells and whistles. If you've got unlimited funds, you can make that 48 hours pretty special. I think that's why we've done great in the transfer portal, because I think I think, recruiting sometimes is about, how fancy that 48 hours are. I think the transfer portal is about what's real and what people really want to be a part of. However, that recruiting still matters. So we are in a situation where, again, when you look at what the different leagues are paying out, the schools and the revenues just from, there isn't an even playing field. Now, we're fortunate here in Miami because, again, our resources are town that we're located in. That's what gives us our competitive advantage. So our ability to take advantage of that is what keeps us in that mix, and that's what makes this place in Miami special. So that's why we don't want to say, well, they have more. We're not worried about what they have. But there is a reality in college football that has changed the recruiting nature of the game as it's gone national that did not exist 20 years ago.
Coach, we got time for a couple more. We're going to go first to Gary Fuhrman from CaneSport. Gary, go ahead.
Hey, Manny, how are you? Because I think of the quality of the last couple recruiting classes that you've alluded to a little bit here today, there is a resounding cry amongst the fan base for you to wholesale play the younger players. Can you talk a little bit about that from your viewpoint and the decision-making process that you go through in determining whether to take a talented young freshman kid like a James Williams and replace a veteran guy like a Gervin Hall who has played an enormous amount of defensive football for you? And, not that that's the only example, but it is a example. And just the difference between a younger player who might even be ranked a 5-star coming out of high school, being able to walk onto a college campus like this and be ready to handle the load of a ACC game day, for example, like what you'll face Thursday night?
Yeah. Well, I think you kind of said it yourself. I mean, you handle those things on a case-by-case basis. It's, who's in front, who's the older guy that you're speaking of, and who's the younger guy, what are they capable of? And because really the idea is what kind of role are they capable of? I mean, are they able to play every snap? It's a major difference, not just in terms of the assignment, but can they handle the expectation, because, their mistakes get magnified. Like, for example, obviously the young wideouts were so impressive, right? Charleston Rambo is so impressive. And Keyshawn Smith, who's still a young guy, is very impressive. And, you got, Brashard's doing great things. Restrepo's still impressive. And Mike Harley's still, one of your top leaders. So that's a good problem. What you really want is you want the rising tide to sort of float all boats. Now, if you have an older guy that's not performing, then maybe his role has to, go down. I don't know that it can ever go, 100 to 0 to 0 to 100. But you certainly, as you get a sense for how these guys respond in games, you get a sense in terms of what the snap count should be, how much they can handle, how much exposure they can get to the game. But it's obviously, Gary, as you know, it's going to be a different speed out there Thursday night than what it was on Saturday. Saturday went exactly the way we wanted it to go. And we think that those guys their roles are going to increase at whatever spot you mentioned, but the stakes are going to be high on Thursday, as it will every week going forward.
Coach, last two for you. We're going to go first to Susan Miller-Degnan from the Miami Herald. Susan, go ahead.
Manny, have you heard from any of the recruits about about that ESPN, I don't know, whatever it was, Kirk Herbstreit said, and those guys, the thing you're referring to, have any of the recruits talked to you about that, or current players?
I've had no feedback from any of the recruits about that story.
And anybody, any current players?
No, none of those guys. I think our current players, they get it, but no one's brought that up.
The other thing is I want to ask you about Leonard Taylor. He got a lot, his first playing time, a lot of snaps. What was your evaluation of his play? He seemed very excited to be out there.
He was. How cool on James Williams' interception. When he gets up to celebrate the first guy that he runs and hugs his LT on the field. That was a pretty awesome moment. LT played. He did some good things. He can finish a play. He's disruptive in the backfield. I think from a conditioning level, he got tired a little bit. It's a little bit different deal out there in the game. But I think he's a guy that shows that he can We also kept things very, very simple on Saturday, which helped from an assignment standpoint. But I think he showed that he's a guy that his role can continue to increase and be a guy that should, factor into our mix of the guys we got playing defensive tackle.
Thanks.
Coach, last one for you is Manny Navarro from The Athletic. Manny, go ahead.
Hey, Manny. So I remember when you first got the job, I talked to Blake James about, his decision to make the hire. And he talked about it being sort of a 4 to 5 year trip, that it would take before you guys could get competitive to maybe compete for ACC championships. And that's kind of the window that he saw. And today when you talked, you mentioned how, this is so much about these last 2 recruiting classes. Maybe we all got it confused. We knew you had an experienced team coming back. And the rough start, maybe our expectations were a little bit further ahead for this program than it should have been, because it seems to me like with what you told us today that, everybody's in alignment, that this is a process. This is a long-term vision, not necessarily a, dependent on things rising in a steady pattern. In other words, I guess my question would be, have you been told by the administration that despite the maybe tough start to the season that, they've got your back and they see this as more of a long-term thing and not so dependent on what you guys necessarily do in this 3rd season with you as coach?
Let me ask you this, man. Can both things be true at once?
I guess they could.
Yeah. In our mind, we were competing for the ACC championship a year ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
I want to repeat. We came in 3rd in the ACC last year, and the team that came in 2nd is not in the ACC. That's just a fact. Now, I know we had a bad game against North Carolina. We still finished with less conference losses than they did. We came in 3rd last year with the guys we have. But 2 things can be true at once. You can compete for the ACC, which is still our standard, but you can still have a long-term vision of what it takes to build a roster, right, to get it to where you want to go. So I don't see it as, oh no, it's all long-term. Wait till we do this, and then in the short term, that's an excuse for our performance right now. No. That's not what I'm saying at all. That's why the very first thing I mentioned is that I'm responsible for our performances this year. But I still know the way forward is that you've got to be able to stack classes. We have a model on who we want to follow on this. I mean, if you look at what Clemson did, it's about the same thing that Clemson did when they were building through, and they were they couldn't get past Jimbo and the Seminoles, and that's how they went. They kept recruiting. They finally got a transformative quarterback, and then another, and that's how they got to be where they are. I mean, there's a pattern of how these things occur and how you build a program. But I don't think they were sitting there saying we'll be fine when Trevor Lawrence gets here. They were still taking all the steps and still trying to compete at that moment. Same thing when Jimbo got Florida State back up and running. So this is just the way that it goes. So please don't misinterpret what I'm saying is that, oh no, we'll be good when. No, that's another aspect of it. That's another level of the program. What I'm saying is, on evidence of what we've seen from the 20 and the 21 class, if we stack 2 more classes like that, we're going to be really excited about what our locker room looks like. Now, that being said, to your point, yeah, we've got older guys, we've got an experienced team this year. Our expectation is to go perform. We know what's at stake over these next 8 weeks. And we think we got as good a shot as anybody. But we're in a league where, the next 8, you can see it. You can win them all and you can lose them all. That's where we are in this league. So we got to control our performance to make sure that we play our best starting this Thursday night.